have. Hello everyone, welcome to our seminar. Today we have the visit of the Professor Linda Chelan Li from City University of Hong Kong. So we're gonna address this topic about the Chinese strategy of insertion in the globalized economy and the globalized world, especially through the lenses of the Greater Bay Area, which we're gonna get into that later. Of course, I was talking with Linda about the content of the seminar, so she's gonna talk more than expected about the trade war. She's adapted some aspect of the presentation to the current political international conjuncture. So yeah, so let me introduce, of course, to Dorotea Lopez, the director of the Institute of International Studies of the Universidad de Chile. She's hosting this event. Hola. And Don Ricardo Gamboa, the Deputy Director of the Institute of International Studies. So students, professors, welcome here. Thank you very much for coming. So let me present Linda, her profile and her CV. So Linda Li is a professor of political science at the Department of Public and International Affairs at the City University of Hong Kong. Also, she's the director of the Research Center of Sustainable Hong Kong. So Linda is a specialist in Chinese policy, politics, and political economy. She has published a number of books and articles on these topics. And also she is a specialist, more recently, she has developed a line of research focusing on sustainable development and cross-border policies in China, especially the Greater Bay Area, the southeast of China, but also some connections between China and ASEAN, Southeast Asia. In particular, within this research center of Sustainable Hong Kong, she has developed a number of applied research and policy papers on these subjects. So she combines the academic research with these more policy-oriented products and services through this research center. So they have this double experience that I think is very suitable for us, for the Institute of International Studies. We also try to combine both legs of the movement, research and applied science. So that's it. Linda, the floor is yours.
Thanks. What a good morning, to you all. And I just flew in from Hong Kong via Sydney 2 days ago. Okay, I need to give me some time to get over the jet lag. It's actually still in progress. So, but I hope I appear fresh enough, okay, to meet all of you here and also people online. I must say that the flight, I expect a long flights, okay, but it's not as long, because I've been psychologically prepared for it. So pretty good, okay. Pretty
Wasn't
good.
as bad.
Yeah, not as bad. I appear, one piece, okay. And so after 2 days rest, and I have a chance to take a look at Santiago as well. I visited a number of museums, or 2 museums actually, yesterday. The National History one and also the pre-Columbian Columbus one are very good. Moderate size. I sometimes don't like huge museums, which I spend a lot walking around that time. We look at exhibits. So I really appreciate that. And of course, the narratives of history is always complex. But I appreciate the efforts, Well, coming back to what I'm here today, first of all, thanks for the invitation for me to make this my first ever trip to Latin America, I must say. Okay, I've been thinking that I need to come to different parts of this world sooner rather than later. So I'm very happy to have this chance. As Juan introduced me, actually I'm a China studies person, okay, from my early PhD studies. I work on my thesis at the time when I did it in the late 1980s to early 1990s. That was when I did my PhD at SOAS, University of London. I research on central local relations in contemporary China. The reason was very simple, because back in my early days, okay, in secondary school, I was fascinated by historical narrative that with such a continental-sized country, okay, China, and the long history, we boast 5,000 years of history, although I think it's basically the last 2,000 years is formally recorded. But I think all history are contested because the whole road to history, right? But we have a history of division as well as unity. But by and large, we remain a unitary entity, okay, after all these years. And but I think that is still a kind of challenge, which actually part of it will be covered today. This is being a young student, okay, at the time. I was young, a young student from Hong Kong. Obviously, this topic about division or integration or decentralization interests me a lot. So I entered my academic studies with that topic in mind. I'm trying to understand political changes, national integration, decentralization, how powers, what exactly is this power, okay, this concept, and how do people work, and how do political systems, social systems evolve and to the better of, for the better of humankind, okay, so this is the big ideas that I have had as a young student, okay, in those days, and I hope I still keep some of the tribes in those days, when now as not as young, decades after. Well, anyway, in the last 10 years or so, I started to work a little bit more outside mainland China. Instead of focusing on domestic Chinese politics and domestic Chinese developments, I work on a bit more about, first of all, Hong Kong and China cross-border relations, and then more broadly about regional focus and also the international dimension. In particular, I have conducted a major project focusing on Belt and Road Initiative, which is a major national policy of the Chinese government with a global perspective, and obviously that attracted a lot of controversies across the board. And the notion and the theme of sustainability permeates, okay, all these discussions, because after all, to the extent that we would like to have a desirable change, okay, for the better of humankind, one important variable that we need to bear in mind is how to make things work, and how things can sustain, right? And rather than, we often, we cannot sustain the efforts, oftentimes we have violent revolutions, but we have backfires, right? We have violent backlashes. So, and in the process of this back and forth, the human lives and a lot of things would suffer. So I think the notion of sustainability, how to manage process of change, always interests me a lot, and because actually that I think to a lot of considerations in the Chinese context, what we heard a lot about why decisions were not made or made. This consideration of sustainability usually looms very large, okay, looms very large. So that's also why I would like to, I focus a lot on this concept of sustainability. Okay, back to what I would like to talk about today. What I would like to share is comes out from more or less my 10 years of research focusing on Belt and Road Initiative and role of Hong Kong. Because from a young, not so young, from a researcher based in Hong Kong, I always, so my study on Belt and Road Initiative had this Hong Kong angle. Obviously, we have to understand the entire policy as part of the research, but very explicit application perspective, I think, when I conduct this research. So this is meant to be a public policy research when I first started it. There is the role of Hong Kong for the sustainable development of this Belt and Road Initiative. The intention is not only for the sustainable not for the decision makers, okay, for the power, for the government, but actually for the benefits of the people. So that's what I have in mind. So putting the discussion in focus of today, because what adds to this piece of research and the discussion of changing roles of Hong Kong in globalizing China, it's obviously the recent heightening of geopolitical tensions, actually dating from roughly about 2018, okay, when the first trade war, I mean, during the first administration of Donald Trump, I think there is a significant race in the heat between the two major powers in the world, China and the US, over the trade war. So that never, I mean, that the geopolitical tension simply escalated over the years, okay, until until today. So what should I do? Yeah. So this one?
You have to point the
where?
It's okay.
It's okay. So well, this is simply the background, okay. So we know we know all the facts. There is simply one example of the heat, you know, to illustrate the heat of the geopolitical politics these days. China actually is the epicenter of the eye of the storm. So it is still under the reciprocal tariff 145%, and of course, as we all read the news, okay, a lot of analysts calculated that the actual tariff now that China has to pay can be up to 245%. And relatively speaking, I think this country it's not only have 10% or so. Okay, so this is the lowest tariff, okay, under Trump's regime. I think most of the Latin America have a pretty good fared pretty well under this Donald Trump's reciprocal tariff. So just a reminder, I think all of us know that. And how about Hong Kong? Okay, Hong Kong, how do Hong Kong fare under this situation? Hong Kong is regarded by the US government back in a few years ago as part of China, okay, regarding trade policy, because although Hong Kong reunited with mainland China after 1997, okay, from a former British colony, but historically, the rest of the world, including US, okay, regarded Hong Kong as kind of separate political entity, okay, or in terms of trade, in terms of all kinds of things, Hong Kong is not or was not China, okay, but not now, okay, not until a few years ago. So the executive orders apply to Hong Kong, and so basically, you know, Hong Kong and also Macau okay, the two special administrative region practicing different system from the mainland system have not been spared, okay? So we are in the same boat as mainland China, by and large, okay? Why I said by and large, because even though it was regarded as the same custom area, but because of path dependence, put it this way, okay? Because of path dependence, we have been so different. So I think it's not 100% the same as still, okay? So important to bear in mind. So the responses of Chinese government and the Hong Kong government to the US reciprocal tariff are also different, okay? Also different. As we all know, the Chinese government has reciprocated the tariff on US imports to Chinese market by 125%. Okay, I don't know why they don't they don't reciprocate with 145. Okay, so maybe I don't know, how to do the calculation. Same as we don't know how Donald Trump come up with those magic numbers, right? Nobody can understand him. But it's important to notice that Hong Kong differ, okay, even though these days our leaders in Hong Kong, they often say that, oh, we have to follow, okay, the national lead, but not in this case. So Hong Kong offer no retaliatory tariff on US imports in Hong Kong. So we have 0% of tariff. So that illustrates we are still under the one country two system, okay, which is a very important constitutional principle that is being promised and also written into the Chinese constitution as well as the basic law of Hong Kong and Macau. So that is so on the one hand, the Chinese government, okay, the mainland government, they have unveiled a number of countermeasures to retaliate against Trump's tariffs, including filing complaints to WTO, including the reciprocal tariffs to US imports, including the export controls, and also they issue some so-called unreliable entity list, okay, against US corporations. So also they have some suspend some animal produce imports from the United States. And also, I think that is the most importantly for the interest of US is the export controls on some critical rare minerals, okay, rare earth materials and rare minerals. So that is very crucial and have intended to hurt, okay, the high tech sectors in the United States, and also other critical supplies like medical CT ball tubes, okay. So this is a kind of a strategic and essential supplies for our day-to-day use in our strategic sectors. Well, so these are mainland Chinese response, but in the case of Hong Kong, we signal that our government signaled that we are not going to reciprocate with any tariffs against the US, and so we would simply issue some protests, okay, or reminders to our US government counterparts that please, okay, comply with the WTO and free trade agreements and so forth, you know, and so basically we are playing by the rules of the pre-existing rules as a free port, which Hong Kong is. But nonetheless, okay, I think we do have some new measures, although relatively minor, I must say. The Hong Kong Post, that is the government mail service, recently they suspends the postal service for items containing goods to the United States, okay, partly because of the United States have impose a tariff also to these small orders, okay, small values, because traditionally those if you pose a parcel, with some goods below several hundred US dollars value, they would not be taxed. They would be exempted, simply to facilitate, a kind of a day-to-day, flows of goods and services. For instance, between family members, right? You mail something to your daughter or your son who is studying in the US, right? So you won't be taxed. And of course, in these days we have e-merchandise, right? E-merchandise, and but the quantity of the merchandise is not about purchase. Fine, right? We will just exempt this, but not anymore. So there's not now Hong Kong Post would because they said that they are not going to if they continue this kind of service, they need to collect the tariff. All right. So they are not going to do this. Otherwise, the burden would come to the Hong Kong side, right? So they are not going to do this service, and so no more. So if I, for instance, I do have a daughter living in the US. Okay, so if I want to send anything to her, I cannot use the Hong Kong post service, because it's not available anymore. I have to use the commercial delivery service. So that is the implications. So that's a bit of a background, okay, of the geopolitical situation and the Hong Kong and China situation responses. I think the key message, the impact of this is actually to what extent this would have an impact on the special roles of Hong Kong, okay, the traditional special roles of Hong Kong in the context of China, okay, and when China facing the rest of the world, all kinds of pressures. So this what it would impact on Hong Kong, and the special role of Hong Kong obviously rests upon very importantly under because of the one country two system practice and also constitutional principle. And what this one country two system offer and protected is the so-called what we call the additional soft powers that the Hong Kong can offer to China, okay, to help China to better communicate with the rest of the world and to enable the rest of the world to have a better understanding of the Chinese parts of the world. Okay, so that is the traditional role that Hong Kong and to some extent Macau has played in the past. And the key to this exercise of soft power can be boiled down to one word, namely openness. Of course, other things do matter as well. For instance, our institutions, our laws, right? And of course, our economic powers also matters. Okay, if our size of economy is reduced to, for instance, 10% of the current size, right? So obviously, the influence, our influence will be much reduced. But I think if I'm going to, have to single out one most important variable or factor affecting this key of Hong Kong's role, it's the high degree of openness. I think that's why, it's amidst all this geopolitical tensions and the temptation to shut our doors, right? Tariff is actually a way to shut our doors, right? Because if you come in here, I will tax you heavily, right? So it's shutting the doors and windows. So I think that's why Hong Kong government has resisted the temptation, even at this very high peak, right? And then pressure that needs to follow the national leadership. But to some extent, in fact, the Chinese central leadership has always emphasized that Hong Kong has to retain its special function, okay, especially at this time of crisis. So maybe that is the way. That's why how Hong Kong leadership has responded in this current juncture. So what does this high degree of openness boil down to? It's a free global flow of human resources. So and free flow of goods, capital, information, ideas, science, and technology. Okay, so this is what Hong Kong has always prided itself and would never stop. Would never. I wouldn't say never, but try our best. Okay, not to initiate any control. Okay, any control. So. Yeah, and trade and business, the conduct of trade and business in Hong Kong is highly liberalized. Of course, this maybe in Chile, I need not talk too much about the liberal policies because you are well known for it. Okay, well known for it. So, but you know what I mean. Okay, so because in a lot of other jurisdictions. It's never the case, right? There's a lot more bureaucracies and a lot more stamps to charge, right? And it's a lot more difficult to start even a tiny business, right? So it's not never the place. But in Hong Kong, it's very simple. You want to start a one man or one woman, okay, mini enterprise, okay. Today, you almost basically can do within a couple of days, not the same day. Okay, so very simple, very easy, and the cost, the initial cost is pretty low. Especially these days, we get rid of the need of having a separate office. Okay, we can always have, as long as I have a home to stay. Okay, I have a place to stay. My home is my office, right? Wherever I am, this is my office. So this is really facilitates a lot. And we pride ourselves, we want to bring together international talents and enterprises. And that has always been the case. So Hong Kong has been always been a conference of talents and from day one, I think would be from 19th century, okay? From 19th century, so we have been doing this. So the crux of my research regarding the Belt Road Initiative was actually thinking of how better, okay, because what I just mentioned about this free flow of goods and services and talent, has been something very traditional that is have been in place for quite a while, right? So what I did in the past 10 years or so is that to take a look at the circumstances that the new challenges that China faced, all right, China faced, then how we, Hong Kong, given that kind of traditional niche, okay, traditional edge, how we can further develop and bridge the gap and help meet the challenges that a growing China, okay, face, the growing challenges and growing difficulties that's keep knocking on this door. Okay, so that's what I actually tried to do in the past 10 years. So first of all, I try to summarize the challenges for China for the past 10 years. The challenges can be summarized in three types. Okay, the first type is domestic challenges. That is the domestic, within China. Well, actually the list can be much longer, but I try to simplify into four major challenges. The first is it's actually the political authoritarianism, okay, the authoritarian political system vis-a-vis the marketization of the economy, right? So on the one hand, the Chinese government has has already started very radical and they persisted in the marketization and reform with the economy, right? But at the same time, they have persisted and insisted that we don't want to change a bit regarding politics, okay? So that obviously has tension, right? So that obviously has tension. So this is the first challenge. The second is you can just look at the economy, all right? So the Chinese government, the leadership, to readily acknowledge this is very important. They want faster growth. They need faster growth, but at the same time, they want better growth, right? They want better growth. And so they started recognize it actually decades ago, in the 1980s, almost right after they started the reform. They understand that, oh my goodness, the mode of economic growth has problems. They keep talking about it every year in every government reports, every annual sessions of the National People's Congress. Okay, so the specifics of the problems obviously change over the years. Okay, as things go progress. But nonetheless, I think the dilemma between speed and quality was always there. Okay, so that remains a very important challenge. And the third one, it's equity, okay, and redistribution. So I think this is obviously very generic in all societies, right, including in Chile, I suppose, right? So on one hand, we want faster growth, but sometimes how we can adequately distribute the benefits of the growth, right? So that sometimes, unfortunately, it's not that easy, right? It's not that easy. So that remains, and that the challenge has particular importance, political importance in China, because of the legitimacy of the political regime. It's a socialist, right? It's a socialist republic. So it has additional political implications, right? If it does not do good enough in terms of redistributive justice. And the middle income trap, as China become better off, okay, better off. So the leadership is increasingly aware that it has entered the middle income range, okay, in terms of World Bank told us, okay, or world history told us, right? A lot of countries have entered the world middle income, but they stop to progress further, and some regress. Right? So the Chinese leadership are very conscientious of this trap, all right? Whether he or not, but they would like to transcend it, avoid it. So that is, yeah, so for primarily. And the middle one is the international external pressures, right? So trade tensions have been there since after the mid-2010s, especially after 2018. Security tensions have been on the rise in more recent years, right? And the cultural tensions has been there, especially for instance, after the Belt and Road Initiative, China was come up with all kind of unexpected, well, from point of view of the leaders, okay, they don't expect that amount of criticisms, and some of them are, I would say, come from cultural tension. And of course, new global demands expectations. Some of these actually started in Hu Jintao's time, that is before the current administration come into place in 2013. Okay, so starting from late 2000s, when China became, for instance, exceeded Germany, right? And they exceeded Japan, right? And so forth. During those years, you know, within 5 years, I forgot exactly how many years. Okay, China climbed the ladder really fast in a few years. You know, from a few years. So at this time, it was new global demands, and this stop talking about this China threat, okay, in the international circles. So this started more than 15 years ago. So the third quarter is the green challenge, right? A green challenge. We all know that, you know, the world is getting, reminded us that we only one of those creatures, okay, living on the planet. So sustainability challenges, and of course, to the extent this is something that all of us need to face, and all of us need to collaborate. But since China is accounts for almost 1/4 of the world population, so with the size of it, so it has a large responsibility as well, right? And so a lot of criticisms are from the international and also actually from domestic challenges are related to this sustainability challenges. So 3 types of challenges that the Chinese government. So in view of these challenges, the Chinese leaders in the past 10 years, they tried to come up with some responses, right? Policy response. So I would say 3 types of responses. The first is the Belt and Road Initiative. They try to respond to the external challenges, okay, external challenges, and also part of those domestic challenges regarding production and the need for new markets. And then this is the second challenge is the second response is the supply side reform and also consumption side reforms, and this is to meet the challenge coming from the domestic challenge. The domestic challenge, especially regarding the tension between a faster growth and better quality growth, right? So this is they come up with this, and then they also They also work with, they also develop a lot of policies on sustainable development. So China actually has been quite proactive, okay, in formulating new standards and new policies on sustainable development. The Ministry of Environment started as a Bureau of Environment in what time I forgot, in the early 2000s. Okay, so it was, and then it was upgraded into a ministry in 2010s, and then it was kind of reorganized and re-strengthened a few years after. So and then under Xi Jinping, the current leadership, sustainable development and having a greener China, ecology was actually put in the among the first tier of priorities of China, of national policy. So of course, there are always gaps between policy and practice, okay, as in other areas as well. And also one problem sometimes we face was that sometimes they executed some policies too drastically. And to the extent that, for instance, in one recent year, one winter, I remember, all of a sudden the government announced that the cities, the residents would not be allowed to burn coal, those coal balls, okay, to keep warm. But not all cities have had the good infrastructure. or pattern heating systems. So if you ban those burning of pole balls, of course, this is very highly polluted, right? Those because the product is of low quality and technology is relatively rudimentary, right? But you ban this, okay? So we are left in the cold, right? In the cold winter of northern China. This is simply miserable, right? So sometimes, governments just they just execute, because they want to meet certain targets, right? Reduce the carbon emissions, but that is simply not sustainable. So they need to reverse it, after a while, of course. Right? So this is something that we need to know. And then with this, okay, in the three types of major policy responses, the Greater Bay Area, okay, the GBA, actually has strategic roles for the three types of policy responses. So the Greater Bay Area refers to the 19 cities, okay, including Hong Kong and Macau, and 9 cities in the southern part of Guangdong province, neighboring Hong Kong and Macau. This policy was enacted as a concept. It appears in the 2010s. Okay, initially within Guangdong, it's promoted within Guangdong, but without much content and without much focus. Okay, it seems to be talking about intercity or intra-region collaboration. Okay, for better economic development or social development. So, towards the end of the 2010s, the central government took charge of it, and then they tried to formulate some more explicit policy so what exactly is the Greater Bay Area policies about? Okay, and because when the central government was formulating this policy, in fact, my research team was already working on Belt and Road Initiative and Road Hong Kong. So we obviously would put attention onto this, and we have already written a policy paper on the subject. So when the central government, the research team, they have a research team, okay, coming to Hong Kong and Macau to do some field work and in order to prepare for the drafting of a blueprint or for the policy in 2017. So they first come to our research center, and then I have a mini meeting with them, okay, in a room, smaller room like this, and with a few of us, and then the 2 researchers from Beijing. So they are the drafters. Okay, they are the drafters. So we talk about our views about Greater Bay Area, what it should be. So what I told them was more or less a version of this. I proposed that Greater Bay Area should not be a plan about regional development. It's not about a plan how to develop the 11 cities, but it should be a plan to help to enable China on the whole, or the Chinese government on the whole, how to better mitigate the risk or the issues arising from its responses. So in other words, the Chinese government want to develop the Belt and Road Initiative in order to respond to the international pressure. It wants to develop new reforms, okay, in order to address the internal transition needs. It wants to develop a new policy regarding ecology and sustainable development, right, in order to better respond to the challenges of climate change and blah, 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 right, all this expectation from a large country to shoulder responsibility in global sense, right? So it has all the aspirations, ambitions. What it lacks is specifics, right? Like what I mentioned. It wants to achieve those net zero targets, but is it a way that to simply ban all the use of the coal balls before you have the infrastructure in place, right? How are you going to implement and design your steps in such a way that you can achieve your purpose, even though incrementally, but you can do it sustainably and without backfire and back and forth, right? Wasting efforts and time and costing social capital and political capital, right? That's important. So even in a authoritarian regime, you need the support of people, right? You need legitimacy. Otherwise, you have nothing. So I think that's what I mean. Okay, so they need they actually need to do a lot more things. For instance, in the Belt and Road Initiative, they have grand visions. Okay, how to do to this connectivity. Okay, with the rest of the world, right? To do more trading, to have more bonding with different peoples, right? But at the end of the day, they got heavily criticized, right? The dams were said, oh, you just ignore our religious belief, this place should not be dammed, right? And then this project, you have displaced our local neighborhood, right? And why you don't have sufficient consultation, right? So and so forth, right? There are lots of issues. So a lot of things, boil down to it's not sufficient to have grand visions. You have to have smart plans. You have to have good procedures, right? Procedural justice, communication, empathy, and how to work with all the stakeholders. So this is all very important. I think that is a lot in lacking. So and so this is we need to for instance, so enhance the government's capacity, right, and promote international cooperation regarding Belt and Road Initiative, and for the reform for the supply side and consumption side reforms, because this is actually a long-standing agenda within the Chinese government. They started from late 70s, right? The China miracle is actually a product of all these reforms, right? To start with, get rid of the price, the fixed prices of agricultural products, and then all kinds of products, right? How they reform the state sector, how they try to gradually liberalize the labor markets and so forth, right? And then they don't require, your way to approve your marriage, okay? Before you want to get married, you have to get your factory boss to say yes to you, and you want to give birth to a child. Obviously, you need to enter into a plan, right? And okay, this is your quota. This is for you this year, right? So this is all this now get rid of. So this is all kinds of reforms, right? But right now, I think there is a bottleneck. They don't know what else to reform, or even though they know what to reform, they don't know how to reform because there's a lot of so-called Western interests, right, and resistance, right? And of course, there are always Western interests all the way. But so how actually to design how to build alliances, how to mitigate the resistance, right? How to neutralize the resistance. I think those things, they need a lot of thoughts, and so that's a lot of things to do. So what we want to stress to them is Greater Bay Area should be seen as a mechanism for reform and development, and how Greater Bay Area can help because the Great Bay Area is, we have a second system. So the beauty of having a second system is that we demonstrate how things can be done alternatively, okay? And then, of course, we cannot preach people, you have to simply to copy us, okay? Copy and paste, right? Copy and paste. No, sometimes can be done, but at least we demonstrate that how things can be done alternatively, and then it's up to the clients, right, to think, because you know best your problem, right? You know best what you need to fix, right? And then you need to come and pick and choose, and you need me to give you advice. Ask me, okay? So I think that's the approach. So to a large extent, this is actually something that Hong Kong has done since the 1980s. Because when China first opened up, it's actually open to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is the main target opening. Hong Kong business people, they just flooded, okay? They just flooded to Guangdong initially, and then to north of Guangdong also. And then they brought capital, not only capital, they also brought talent. The mid-level managers, the factory floor supervisors, okay, the skilled laborers. So they brought not only the technical skills, but also management skills. And then they co-own enterprises with the Chinese partners, right? So of course, a lot of problems aroused, right? A lot of sufferings as well, but there's a lot of cross-border learning as well. I mean, on both sides, okay? And so and the professionals, the entire accounting professions in China was actually built from Hong Kong. So the big fours in Hong Kong, they just migrated to China. Okay, so they are from Hong Kong. In fact, up to today, they are still from Hong Kong. Although there's a lot of localization these days, obviously, right? But the root is from Hong Kong. So so that is what Hong Kong has been doing. But since maybe after the 2000s, the strategic importance of this kind of learning and has been kind of forgotten, okay, kind of slighted by the mainland side, because they thought they have grown up, they have graduated, okay, they've graduated, so they stopped talking down of Hong Kong, basically, okay, they said that, oh, we can't reach you anymore, right? And so I think what our team tried to convey to them is actually no, okay? Because given the challenges that the Chinese economy and the Chinese system face, and they need, or they are fully aware that they are in need of deeper reform and more reforms. So they need to come back to Hong Kong, and then, of course, Hong Kong don't have all the ready answers. It does not mean that we have a lot of recipes, right? You just put the towel from the drawer and say, oh, you just put ABC. No, but here there are some talents, there are some people who can co-work with you, so we can learn together. So it's something like this, okay? So that's what I mean by the mechanism for reform. So this is the theory, okay? The theory is, you can recognize it is basically historical institutionalism, okay? The mainland China's institutional system, Hong Kong institutional system, they have contradictions, right? So the theory of institutional theory tells us that when different institutions come into interactions, they come into the interfaces, they would have interactions, and they the contradictions would induce change, right? They would induce change, and so the struggles, the negotiations, the compromises, and then this would lead to changes at the institutional level. So in theory, that's the idea. Of course, if the mainland side, they are more receptive, which that would have that will have an implication on the struggles, right? So if they're not receptive, they don't think that they need Hong Kong's system to help, then they're not receptive, then they would have an impact on the struggles and negotiation and compromises, right? So that's why commission and attitudes and values matter, all right? Agents matter. So there are some basic facts. Hong Kong today, 2024, as of, in terms of the ranking, in position of infrastructure, economic performance, business efficiency, government efficiency, and mainland China, I think we are still quite ahead. Economic performance, we are below because of size. Okay, so that's not comparable. A bit of background, okay, our trade investment with Chile. Chile was Hong Kong's third largest trading partner in Latin America, but in terms of global share, it's 34th. So, and Hong Kong was Chile's 16th largest trading partner. But by and large, I think our trade is actually relatively small, all right, relatively small, and so we can, I would say, we have a lot of room to grow. But at the same time, we already have signed a free trade agreement back in 2014. So the infrastructure was there, all right. The infrastructure was there, but the practice, I mean, the actual trade and investment was still not large. So let's see how we will do in the future. I think a similar situation apply for Latin America in general. So this is the overall situation. The major markets in Latin America, the largest one in terms of the exports, it's Mexico, between Hong Kong and Mexico, and Chile is the third one. Altogether, I think the Latin America exports, if you add all this together, and all this together is actually less than 2%. In other words, Latin America market accounts for less than 2% of Hong Kong's exports to the rest to the world, and also imports as well. I think imports is even smaller amount in terms of the total. So which all tells that the message is that of course, because we are physically so far apart, right? But at the same time, I think this also tells us there's room to grow. After all, this is in the Western Hemisphere. North of South America is North America, and North America is the main market of Hong Kong, right? So see this way, as long as we have a better flight route, I would say, okay, it's not that far, all right? Now it's far because we don't have a good connectivity, right? In terms of infrastructure, we don't have good enough connectivity. So that can be changed, okay, if we want to, right? So this is up to our efforts. Yeah, so this is a half full glass between Hong Kong and Latin America. In terms of the major trading partner, Chile, no, mainland China, actually, it's quite important, right? In terms of export and import as well. Export actually in mainland China accounts for almost 40%. Import is more or less approaching 1/4. So it's both export we are China is actually above US. So I think this is very important part. So going back for the challenges of China, we can see that now the trade tensions, right? This one is looming large, and the external trade tensions, the security tensions, all this looming so large, and this would having an impact on. In fact, this external pressures will have an impact with the domestic pressures as well. They have interactions, right? Interaction, because the domestic challenges will have impact on how China respond to the external challenges, and at the same time, of course, the external challenges will have impact on the situation within China. So they're interactive. They're very important. So it does say that, so with that context, we can also see that Hong Kong and Beijing also have our tension, okay? Hong Kong and Beijing also have the tension. And the Beijing-Hong Kong tension is actually part of the largest challenge of the domestic challenge for China. Right, because Hong Kong, as you know, we have our equivalent of social protest in 2019, and similarly, we don't have a centralized leadership of the protest, even though we have a good number of politicians involved in it. Some of them just returned home last week from prison. So. Yeah, so how this Hong Kong and Beijing, this tension works out. Actually, I think that is important, because this is also part of that would hinges upon the effectiveness of the Greater Bay Area policy, right? Because the Greater Bay Area policy is basically about leveraging on Hong Kong as Hong Kong is, okay, or was, okay, and to help the rest of China, right, to mitigate all these complex challenges, okay, in this complex world. So the prerequisite is Beijing and Hong Kong knows how to deal with their own tension, okay. So if they fail to manage their own tensions, how can they work together to manage the external tensions, right? So that is very important. Of course, this is a project in progress, right? Yeah, so this is, I think, a remark extensive contradictions between institutions of the two systems, crowding possibilities of symbiotic innovations and change. I put a question mark there. Sometimes question mark is bigger, sometimes it's smaller. I just hope that as time went by, we can become smarter and more intelligent, and the question mark becomes smaller. Okay, although it will not go away. I dare say it will not go away, but sometimes having some question mark would propel creativity. Okay, would force us to, and after all, we have to persist. Okay, there's no alternative. We have to persist. And as I'm in this country, okay, I also try to learn a little bit about the project in progress in this country, and I hope we can also co-learn together. Am I going too slow? I think I'm almost finishing.
Okay, we're gonna leave some time for the questions.
Yeah. So the last one is return to the core. I think is my towards the end. We have to go back to the core is that Hong Kong is a one country, two systems thing, and we need to understand that the emphasis on national integration should not be narrowly interpreted as Hong Kong required to conform with the system and practices in mainland China. And then we need to keep the unique advantage of Hong Kong being open and near borders connectivities with international communities, and within which, of course, rule of law is a core institution and value. And I think, we are keeping that well, okay? Given all these tensions in past few years, I think the rule of law has been well protected, very jealously guarding this one. Okay, so one last thing, I just want to have a bit of advertisement. The Research Center for Sustainable Hong Kong, this was established in 2017. In fact, our focus on research, one major focus is to think about how to leverage on the strength of Hong Kong professional services and institutions to work on more things. Okay, so these are some of the examples we have done in recent years. Okay, I think it's not.
Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you very much, Linda, for this very informative presentation, very complete with a lot of questions, more than answers. So it's an exciting process, an ongoing process of the internationalization of China through this greaterbay area with its own contradictions and learning processes. So let's open the discussion to the rest of the room. So anyone has to make a comment or question. Yeah, Renzo, please.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. It's been very informative, for me at least. And I want to ask if this GBA, this Greater Bay Area today, is actually integrated so far. Does it operate as a single entity or something close to a unique entity? Or because there are two special administrative regions, but also a mainland province. So these challenges you've talked about of this incompatibility of the system of governance or how they manage their own challenges. Is today this GBA working as a single or a strong entity, or Hong Kong is working their own way, Macau their own way, and Guangdong their own way? How on the field is this being developed today?
Okay, the Greater Bay Area is not an administrative region, so it is not operating as for instance, like a new region.
Subnational.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. Rather, as I explained, it is a policy. The essence of policy is actually to encourage the 11 cities, okay, including Hong Kong, Macau, to enhance the collaboration together, so that they can, first of all, the region, okay, in other words, the 11 cities, they can develop better. But more importantly, as I emphasize to the central leadership as well, or whoever I'm talking, is how the collaboration and how this region can help the rest of the country to deepen the reform, to improve the various kinds of things they're doing. So in other words, this was kind of like a pilot song of changes, you may say so. Okay, so the changes. The next question is, what kind of change, right? What kind of change, right? So people have been exploring what kind of changes. Currently, the central government has promulgated, actually in 2023, some measures to enhance the crossover of talent from Hong Kong and Macau to Guangdong. Because in the past, for instance, if I'm a lawyer or accountant, okay, I want to work in or develop our business or whatever in Guangdong, I would need to, there are a lot of hurdles, all right? There are a lot of hurdles in the mainland side, on the mainland side. one of major hurdles is whether my professional credentials will be recognized, right? So I would have to cross a lot of credentials, hurdles, in order that I can have a license, okay, to practice. I'm a doctor, right? I'm a medical doctor. So can I just walk through the border and then open my clinic, right? And employ a nurse or bring my own nurse to them? No, okay. So right now they're trying to, they have new policies to enhance this kind of crossover of talent, to make it simpler, to make it more feasible. Yeah, so this is an example.
Thank you very much, Linda. I mean, just used to say to give some information, we are talking about a territory that will be around less than 100 million people, like 90 million people, like the Greater Bay Area, territory, around that. And it will be the GDP equivalent to South Korea, okay? And also like in Shenzhen, of course, is the most valuable technology companies and industrial companies are located in Shenzhen, which is the northern border of Hong Kong. So it's just like the natural gateway, opening of openness of mainland China to the world. Historically, not just now, historically it has played this role, and now let's see if it will recover it or not. But it's quite future, it's like the GDP of South Korea. So if it will be an independent country, it will be in the G7, okay? Understand? So anyone has any other question or comment?
Yes. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Can you present yourself, please?
I'm Jorge Alfaro. I live in Shenzhen until October last year.
No.
So I wanted to ask you, what do you think about because of course, the Chinese government is trying to create a great area that is pretty much integrated. But there are some frictions in the sense that there are people in Hong Kong that feel that their culture has been a little bit overwhelmed by the immigration from people from the mainland.
Yeah.
So there is like an ongoing process that people think, we are 7 million in Hong Kong, the mainland is 1,400 million. What do we do to preserve a little bit the distinctiveness of our culture? So what do you think about this? Because the demographic trend tells you that more or less maybe integration is just because of the pressure of population change, not just because of some format. But what do you think about this?
Yeah, you're talking about cultural tension, right? Cultural tension certainly it's there. But I think you may say so. 2019, the protests, okay. One of the factor it's the include the cultural tension, okay, between the Hong Kong and rest of north of the border. But I think since then, more recently, I think people they become more realistic, put it this way, okay, and also we also understand actually quite a lot of new immigrants in Hong Kong from mainland China. They are very jealously protecting Hong Kong's peculiar and unique features, because that is why they would like to come to Hong Kong, right? They do not want, on one hand, they would like Hong Kong to pick up some features that they are used to in mainland China, like the use of WeChat Pay, okay? So the e-payment, Hong Kong is much slower in developing e-payment than in mainland China, right? I suppose no other places in the rest of the world, okay, use e-payment that extensively. So Hong Kong, of course, we are not as, we are starting. So they would like Hong Kong to develop more e-payment. But for instance, like the freedom of speech, they love it. Obviously, they love to criticize all kinds of things in Hong Kong, but they do not want Hong Kong to become less critical, okay, less open to this freedom and free flow of information. So I think, yeah, so that is one major reminder of us. On the one hand, there are certainly cultural tensions. That's normal, right? That's normal. But at the same time, I think communities, they gradually try to co-learn together how to live co-live with one another, have better understanding of one another. I think now people are getting, may I say, more seasoned in this doing this, and actually when after 2019, because of sometimes some changes in policies, I would say sometimes administration are overreacting. Okay, they're overreacting to our protests. But quite a number of mainland residents, or commentators still in the mainland, they've spoken out in defense of Hong Kong.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's like this outsourced civil society, that is very famous paper put it in that way. Yeah. Can you present yourself, please?
Yes, my name is David. I want to know a little more about this.
Which institution?
No, I'm a school teacher, just a curious person, because I love the education system in Hong Kong. Is there a contradiction at an institutional level between the mainland educational system and the one that's inserted inside Hong Kong? That's my main question. And if there is, how this difference make the conflicts up for?
You mean the difference between the education in mainland and Hong Kong? In the schools, you mean?
The schools, university, the whole system. As there is more openness, maybe the system has a little difference between the mainland and Hong Kong, and that's actually might affect the cultural changes in both Hong Kong and mainland.
I see. Well, certainly very different. Or as an educator myself, okay, how to describe it? Hong Kong, we don't have how to describe it. We try to have a liberal education, put it this way, okay? Even though I must say that we do not always succeed in delivering it, okay, especially in the schools, simply because of the shortage of higher education places. Well, on the one hand, because I'm teaching in a university, and we know that relatively speaking, the gap of demand and supply is actually much smaller these days because of demographic changes. Okay, but relatively speaking, from the point of view of parents or school or secondary school students, they will always feel that they have to be. University place is very competitive, right? The still for them is very competitive. So to the extent that we would like school education to be more liberal meaning that do not be too focused on assessment, right? Do not be too focused on getting advancement to universities as if it was the only goal, right, of your education, right? So that is the ideal of liberal education. We started talking about some education reforms. In fact, what time? 2000s, okay? 2000. We have a major education reform in Hong Kong, trying to cut all kinds of assessment and then change the philosophy. But from the feedback of the education sector, the school sector, they think that the reform was a failure. All right, they believe that the reform was a failure. So, but still, by and large, I think Hong Kong system was still less pressurized than the mainland system, from what I understand. Okay, and in terms of the curriculum, then of course there is a major difference as well. Okay, in terms of the curriculum, yes. And in Hong Kong, I think the difference between higher education, I would say, would be, especially for the humanities and social science, I think the difference is much bigger.
Overwhelming?
I dare not say overwhelming, but I certainly would have to re-educate my own students, okay, when they come to me, whether they are at the undergraduate level or postgraduate level. a question I often was asked by my students from the mainland was, is there a model answer? Is there a model answer for exams, for essay, right? So I got this kind of questions, but I seldom would got one from a local students, because they should know that there is none. Yeah, so I need to drive home that message to my other groups of students, as well. But yeah, I think they adapt and they learn fairly well. Yeah, so I have high hopes on education.
Thank you. There was a question in the internet.
No, there's just congratulations,
Are you checking?
because I'm monitoring it.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful work, team. Yeah, maybe Diego and then Andrea, you want to go to I saw your hand. Okay, so maybe you can answer both of them after one each other.
Hello, Professor Min. I'm Andrea Freites, coming from IPE. Thank you so much for your presentation. And I was wondering if I can say that there is any political or financial risk to any country, for example, Chile, entering into the GBA as a trader or through investment, regarding the geopolitical tensions between China and USA. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again, Professor. My question is on the same vein regarding like the international tensions arising to China. I was curious if you could talk a little bit more about the Belt and Road Initiative identified risks to China, because you mentioned that one of the reasons for this policy to be put in place are risks associated with the Belt and Road Initiative. So I was curious if you could expand a little bit more about it, on what sort of risks has China identified in the implementation of this international approach to trade and investment, and specifically, are these challenges towards the mainland? Are these challenges also shared by Hong Kong? And what sort of responses could the Great Bay Area implementation bring to the Belt and Road Initiative, like in a perspective initiative? Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, that it was right. We have one and then
Okay, maybe you can go.
Maybe I address this two
Yes,
first,
yes.
okay?
Or that one and that's las tres juntas y ya terminamos.
Yeah, okay.
Por la hora.
Do you mind if we make the three questions in a row and answer one by one? So the last question in the.
Maybe I address this two
Okay.
first, okay? Otherwise I will forget, okay?
Yes, yes.
To your question, I think, well, my bet, okay, I can only say my judgment, okay, my bet would be the risk is low, okay, for Chile, going to China, because as far as I understand, the relationship between Chile and China, okay, and the policy of Chinese government towards overseas investment, I think from Latin America, including Chile, I think will be very positive. So I would say, generally, okay, the risk will not be high. Okay, and to your question, this is the other side, all right. The risk, I think one of the slide I mentioned about the Road Initiative risk. I think I refer to when the Chinese government, started all these kind of projects in these overseas countries, right? They attracted a lot of criticisms, and usually those criticisms are, first of all, a lot of them are actually regarding the governance of those projects, like the lack of consultation with neighborhood when they need to resettlement, okay, and then some risks would be with sometimes the Chinese project managers, those are usually the state-owned enterprises, they have they over rely on the host countries, okay, on pledging support for them. And then they over rely on the host countries to deal with their own residents, their own citizens, okay, the local resistance. They thought that you want me to come in, right? The government want us to come in, right? And so we sign a contract with the government, right? So the government should have done all the feasibility studies, right? The government should be the one to take care of all this kind of things on the ground, right? But at the end, no. And the government changed, right? And after the election, the government changed, right? So those are the risks that sometimes the Chinese leaders, I mean, the Chinese project managers, they are caught off the guard, right? So this is something they learn hard, okay? They learn hard. And they need to learn how to really, they cannot rely everything on the local government, or even on the national government, on the host countries. They need to do a lot of things. They need to work with the local communities, and then simply, it is not, in a lot of the countries, they are democratically elected, even though democracies can take a variety of forms, right? So it's not another China, right? So, yeah, so I think maybe, and also ecology and all kinds of things.
So, the last question from the people in Zoom. It's a very, very concrete question. So we say, is Hong Kong permitted by Beijing to strike overseas agreements independent of China in areas, such as scientific cooperation? If so, can you provide some examples of this in Latin America? So is the Hong Kong government, regional government, is able to conclude international agreements, like the limited legal personality of Hong Kong, international law? And do you know anything about the scientific cooperation?
Scientific cooperation?
Like the regional, the special administrative region of Hong Kong as a regional government, how can conclude scientific cooperation agreements with third parties, with foreign governments? Is that,
well, right now I don't have any specifics, but Hong Kong has had the autonomy to come into trade agreements or educational, scientific cooperation agreements, okay, with other countries and other parties, whether private sector corporations or universities or other jurisdictions. I think Hong Kong traditionally has this kind of jurisdiction and autonomy, and it has done so, right, in the past. Of course, in various cases, it would keep the national government informed, right? To the extent that it was coming into, for instance, a free trade agreement with Chile, right? Between Hong Kong and Chile. I think, obviously, you would not keep Beijing in the dark, right? But it has the autonomy to.
Yeah, it's part of the World Trade Organization too.
Yes,
the economy, the APEC.
Yes. And it has been Hong Kong's policy to encourage this kind of collaboration all the time.
Okay, so thank you very much, Linda, Dr. Tsai, for this presentation and questions and answers. So let's give her an applause, please.